You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our group with the exact same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
And a pleasant good day to you, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 235 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, another installment of the Week in Review. I'm Taylor Phillips with my co-host Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here with me. Ed, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, Taylor. Enjoying a very nice week, you could say, in terms of not only seeing the Wolverines do well, seeing the Lions do well a little bit, but hate to toot my own horn here. I even got a little bit of exposure on one of our own local radio airwave stations. So,
yeah,
all kind of a good week for me. Hint, hint, plug. But I can, in all seriousness, before you get into discussion, thoughts and condolences go out to the family and friends of Detroit Free Press columnist Drew Sharp, who, as we all know, passed away last week at the very sudden and unfortunate untimely death at the age of 56. I won't go into an in-depth tribute here. A, because I never knew him, I never met the guy. B, I don't think it's nowhere near necessary or even deserving enough for a multitude of things. Where things were sharp. He was definitely well known. Got a lot of, whenever it seemed like national sports or national attention needed to be focused on Detroit, he would be one of the voices that would be interviewed to give his perspective. Of course, fans would see him as being a bit of in some ways, a poor man's Skip Bayless, trolling for the sake of trolling, either be a hater or whatnot. Then, of course, there's the big elephant in the room. We all know about the story involving Connor Cook and our own Miranda McCoy that Sharp, without doubt, plagiarized and was not repentant for in any way, shape, or form.
And he never apologized for it to anyone.
True, and that is very true. But it's, knowing all that, I can't really harp on that too much because at the end of the day, I didn't know the man. I never met the man. There are people who did know him, who have met him, obviously, with his friends, with the Free Press and throughout the media, not just in the media, not just the print media, but also about radio and TV here in Detroit. And, of course, his family members as well. So while I may not have liked how he condoned himself or whatnot, I still can't take away the fact that there are people that are in grieving and are in mourning of him. And so, and in respect for them, I give them all my thoughts, my condolences, and my positive vibes to them as they go through this very, very grieving period.
Me too. Very tragic to see Drew Sharp pass away, even though he never apologized for plagiarizing a blog, not only a blog from David Harns from iSports Web, the beat writer for the blogger for the Michigan State Spartans, but he also plagiarized one of the DSR articles as well, as we may recall, as we dig deep down. Do you remember that?
I think he did that as I remember something along the lines. I can't remember the exact one, but I do know what you're talking about, yes.
Yep. Okay. Well, lots to discuss, but before we begin, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. If people are listening here, have their friends share that as well, and follow me on Spreaker as well at as Taylor Phillips, online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at taylorgatorphillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio DET and like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group. Also find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. Lots to get to, but we're going to start with college football. We got Michigan State, and Central Michigan, and Western and Eastern. But let's start with the undefeated Michigan Wolverines.
Touchdown, Michigan!
What can we say? Just another easy opponent on Michigan's schedule in 2016. They blast the Illinois Fighting Illini 41-8. The Illini dropped to 2-5. The Wolverines improved to 7-0, and they climb up to number 2 in the nation in the AP poll due to Ohio State losing in upset fashion to Penn State. The Buckeyes dropped to 6th in the nation in the AP poll, making Michigan 2nd in the nation. But let's break this down. Michigan started right out of the gate, and just throttled the Illini in the first half. The second half was pretty sloppy, and the offense was not as consistent as they were in the first half. But Illinois could only put 8 points on the board, including a touchdown early in the fourth quarter to Malik Turner, a 43-yard touchdown pass from Jeff George Jr. They would score the 2-point conversion, but the first half, man, the maize and blue, they just never looked back. But more importantly, they kept the Illinois Fighting Illini pretty much off the board. Team statistics, total yards, the Wolverines 561, 295 passing and 270 rushing, to Illinois' 172, 95 passing and 75 rushing. Time of possession, the Wolverines 41 minutes 23 seconds, the Illini 18 and 37. First downs 29-6 Michigan. Turnovers, Illinois 2-1. One of them on an interception and another one on a lost fumble. Michigan's only turnover was a lost fumble. Third down conversions, Michigan 7 of 14, Illinois 2 of 10. Fourth down conversions, Michigan 1 of 2, Illinois 0 for 1. Penalties, only 5 apiece, Michigan 41 yards, Illinois 45. Individual stats, Wilton Speight 16 of 23 at quarterback for 253 passing yards and 2 touchdown passes. Karan Higdon led the way on the ground with 8 carries for 106 yards and a score. Davion Smith even also got a touchdown on 18 rushes for 76 yards and a TD. Amari Darboh, 5 receptions for 99 yards, even though he didn't score a touchdown. He contributed in the receiving department for Michigan's offense continuously. Also, Jake Butt, Tyrone Wheatley Jr., and Khalid Hill scored the other touchdowns for the Michigan Wolverines. The aforementioned Jeff George Jr. for the Fighting Illini, only 4 of 15 for 95 yards. But that's apparently because of Michigan's incredible and extraordinary defense. And of course, the touchdown pass, again, to Malik Turner from 43 yards out. both Turner's only 2 receptions were 43 yards long. But again, just another easy opponent for Michigan, and they took advantage of it. I want you to go through everything, especially the second half. What went wrong, and what do the Wolverines need to do to clean that up heading into East Lansing this Saturday?
Well, the mere fact they committed a turnover, that fumble in the second half, I'm sure that didn't make Jim Harbaugh that much happy as well. And, of course, the ensuing defensive possession, that virtually was the only reason Illinois was able to score at all the entire game. Otherwise, they were completely stonewalled and stone-cold shut out by Michigan's defense. So if there was anything that Harbaugh could find a way to tune up or tweak around, obviously the turnover game, especially now when you know you're facing a very, very, very desperate team in Michigan State. They were looking to have take any break that they can get. Turnovers is one big key as well. So I would say look for them to be more focusing on taking care of the ball more. And likewise, in conversing on defense, try to focus more on, if you have anything, a critique you could say, they didn't get the shutdown compared to what they did against Rutgers. But then again, Rutgers is Rutgers for a reason. So can't really harp on the defense so much as you can, though, harp on the offense for fumbling that ball to begin with. So if there was anything you want to, because that's the most I can find, because what else can you find from a team that beat the team they were supposed to beat quite heavily as they were expected to, by such a wide margin? It was basically glorified scrimmage or glorified practice. That's what it felt like. That's what it's felt like since Wisconsin game with these two games between Rutgers and Illinois, especially Rutgers for obvious reasons. But if there's anything you could take away from that you want to see some type of improvement, I would say this, take care of the ball. Just take care of the football.
Yeah, and that's one thing you got to do. You can't take the Spartans for granted, and we'll get to this. We'll get to the now 2-5 Spartans momentarily coming up next. But you can't fumble the ball. That's one thing that you got to get through your head, and that's the kind of motivation that Michigan needed, the kind of wake-up call that the Wolverines need heading into Spartan Stadium this upcoming Saturday when the Wolverines tackle along with the Spartans at noon. That's going to be on ABC. That's their next game this Saturday. But they only allowed 8 points to Illinois, and clearly that should have been a shutout. But still, Michigan's defense was still doing their thing despite that mistake, despite their offense sputtering in the second half. Just secure the win. That's one positive that we that one extra positive that they need to take from it. But it's also a route win.
Yeah, and if anything, you know how much of a stingy guy Harbaugh can be. For goodness sake, he even made a challenge on the spot of the ball during the game where it was 41-8, yet he still wanted to make sure that the call was right on the field. So when you have that type of mentality with your head coach, that can spread easily onto the players themselves. So knowing that and knowing what they're going to be prepping themselves, hyping themselves up for this week throughout practice, I think they're going to be very razor sharp in their focus come Saturday.
Yeah, that's true. So we want you to lay down the groundwork here. A lot of stuff being done the right way. We laid the groundwork in multiple meetings, as you mentioned to me in private messages on Facebook before we went on the air. They kickstarted their second half of the season, multiple goals still ahead, and with those reserves, getting some reps in these blowouts and getting them some experience, so that when it's their turn so that when it's their turn next year after the seniors depart, they'll be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the seniors that we see right now, obviously on defense, I think it'll be a little bit more of a question mark defensively because it's not so much, the unknown that you have, because Harbaugh's going to get a strong recruiting class. There's no guarantee. That's a guarantee. It's how can you follow? Are you ever going to be able to follow up correctly the daunting task that this defense left you, especially with your secondary with Jordan Lewis, with Channing Stribling, DeMonte Thomas, Delano Hill, and Jabril Peppers, assuming that he, say he wants to go pro, leave a year or two early. So that's always a possibility. So that was the question mark. You want to see how can that defense perform without those guys in the secondary next year. But in terms of laying down groundwork for the offense, we're going to be fine. Harbaugh's going to do whatever he can. It seems like no matter what new quarterback he gets next year, he'll be able to coach him up. He coached the way he coached up Jake Rudock last year. The way he's coaching up Will Spate this year. The running backs, my goodness, you see what we have here now with Davion Smith and Ty Isaac, how they're not just leading the way on the field, but they seem to be leading the way on the sidelines, giving that extra motivation and spark to their team to play as hard as they do on each and every play. That's going to linger on to some of the underclassmen, like a Karan Higdon, for example, to continue that torch, to continue that run for them when they graduate next year. And even you want to go even further, the tight ends. Yeah, Jake Butt, this will be his senior year, but I like what I see, and Ty Wheatley Jr. really like what I see. So, and even when you have guys like Darbo and Chesson in their senior years, yeah, you lose those weapons next year, but think about the weapons that you gain, that you reload with for next year, whether it be Chris Evans or Eddie McDoom. So again, it's starting to fall into a pattern where, even if you're losing talent, you're not rebuilding, you are reloading. So, and it's just in terms of laying groundwork for what the second half of their season brings to them. The obvious things: Big Ten title. They haven't won one in 12 years since 2004, and then of course possibly playing for the national title. That's still, I'm a little bit hush on that, if you could say, as superstitious as possible, because I want to see it happen for myself. They still got beat Ohio State, still got to win the Big Ten title game, so that still remains to be seen. But the spot that they're in right now, number 2 in the rank in the nation, undefeated, 7-0 for the first time since 2006, when they got this close against the BCS title game. And I think you could say a much more scarier and a much more impressive and talented defense that you have here than you had in 2006. Even extends to the coaches and the coaching staff, what Jim Harbaugh is able to do, bringing some of the guys that he had with him in the NFL, like Tim Drevno over on with him to this coaching staff in Michigan. Don Brown just picking up right where DJ Durkin left off. Durkin leaving to go with the Maryland. Then Don Brown just bringing over what he brought from coaching a stout defense at Boston College to now this mammoth here in Ann Arbor. Greg Madison, who I think, a lot of Michigan fans should be thanking their lucky stars that Jim Harbaugh kept over Greg Madison from Brady Hoke's regime. Madison, of course, was the defensive coordinator under Hoke's tenure. I think we can all agree that was one of the few positives that we saw during that time period. So keep Madison on, have him do coach defensive line. It has worked obvious wonders. And obviously what you see with Tyrone Wheatley Sr. now, you can officially say that, what he's done coaching up the running backs. It had a little bit of a slow start, but seeing what they've done in conference play and throughout, even if they had picked up 130 yards against Wisconsin, I think that's more of a credit to what they did, because Wisconsin, as we know, has a strong defensive run. So the fact that Michigan was able to get pop over 100 yards, let alone 130 against them, you say hats off to them. So from coaches to players and in between, this Michigan team has definitely planted the seeds and are laying groundwork, not just for what's ahead of them for the rest of the season, but what's ahead of them beyond that, next year and the year after and so forth.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the rankings, the only team that's in front of them, as people see it, is the defending national champion Alabama Crimson Tide, led by head coach Nick Saban, the former Michigan State Spartan head coach. you get to win the national championship, you got to go through the Roll Tide.
Yeah, it seems like Bama.
Yeah, we'll worry about that later, but go on.
I was going to say, Bama is looking like that final boss in the video game where it's inevitable you have to confront them, unless they somehow get in their own way.
The main boss.
Yeah, that final boss. But unless Bama somehow stumbles, gets in their own way, whether it be against Auburn or in the SEC title game, or even, God forbid, in the semifinal of the playoff, yeah, it's looking like if things hold up the way they are, I'm not sure that's a guarantee on that because Michigan, they still got to play Ohio State and even get through the Big Ten championship game, potentially in a rematch against Wisconsin, a game I kind of dread a little bit, to be honest with you. So between that and even getting through playing one of these other top teams in the playoff, could be at Clemson, could be at Washington, you never know. They're in that top 4 or 5 for a reason. Even Louisville, they have an outside shot to getting back in. Who wouldn't want to see Lamar Jackson in a college football playoff? Maybe playing against Alabama, if need be. So, like I said, there's still a lot ahead for this Michigan team, so where they can't start counting their roses, so to speak. If you want to pardon the terminology, quite ironically fitting regarding the lineage of how Michigan goes far back with the Big Tens and the Rose Bowls. But I digress on that. So again, goals still ahead of them. Still need to maintain focus, and I think Harbaugh will keep their focus on them, as he mentioned in his press conference this week regarding the Michigan State game. He refers to it as a championship game. Practically everyone else was not, for obvious reasons. But for Harbaugh, it shows that the mentality is right there. He's not going to let his players, sniff their own sniff their own crap and buy into the hype. You still got to take this one game at a time, one quarter at a time, one down at a time even. So I really much appreciate that from what Harbaugh is showing.
Yeah, it's like Mega Man now looking up at Dr. Wily, his final and main boss. You got to defeat him to save the planet. Yeah. Kind of like in the old arcade games, which I used to play when I was a kid.
Or if you want to go modern Final Fantasy X, you got to beat Sin. But again, we're going all the way off topic here. But yeah, it still relates to Michigan still a whole hell of a lot ahead of them. That's for sure.
That's right. So with all that Michigan Wolverines talk out of the way, gotta go to the downside of the college football in the mittens topic here. The Michigan State Spartans.
Touchdown MSU!
2-5, 0-4 in the Big Ten after that 28-17 loss at Maryland to the Terrapins. Brian Lewerke got the nod under center, and he and his offense didn't generate much. However, the Spartans had the lead after 3 quarters, but they fell apart in the fourth quarter, allowing 14 unanswered Terrapin points to put the dagger in the heart, and the Spartans find another way to lose for the 5th time in a row, and that's got to be deflating and discouraging for the Green and White Nation. Team stats, total yards, MSU 426, 156 passing, especially by Lewerke, and 270 rushing, all for not very much.
Oh, man!
For Maryland, 447 total yards, 200 passing and 247 rushing. First downs, 22 apiece. Time of possession, MSU 30 minutes, 49 seconds. Maryland, 29-11. Turnovers, Michigan State 2, Maryland 1. Third down conversions, Michigan State just 4 of 11, which is terrible, which is bad, if not terrible. Maryland, 5 out of 12. Fourth down conversions, MSU 0 for 1. Maryland 1 for 3. Penalties, Michigan State got flagged 7 times for 84 yards. Maryland 3 times for just 25. So some of those categories in terms of team statistics, Maryland has outplayed Michigan State. Now looking at the individual stats, Brian Lewerke just 11-24, 11 out of 24 for 156 yards and 1 interception. No touchdown passes whatsoever. And a quarterback rating of 70.7. Plus 10 carries for 79 yards. L.J. Scott led the way in the receiving department for 128 yards on 20 receptions and a score. Gerald Holmes, 13 carries for 59 yards and a score on the ground. R.J. Shelton back to the receiving department, 7 catches for 89 yards. Jamal Lyles, 3 receptions for 57 stripes. For Maryland, at quarterback, Perry Hills, 21 for 27 for 200 yards exactly and 2 touchdowns. Ty Johnson on the turf, 9 rushes for 115 yards. Lorenzo Harrison carried the ball 17 times for 105 and a score. Laverne Jacobs, 9 catches for 67 yards and a TD. And DJ Moore, 4 grabs for 61 and a score. So Michigan State is really falling apart. Now they're falling into a bottomless pit. They're 2-5 now.
Taylor, everything now has essentially come off the wheels for this Michigan State team for their season. I'm not going to say their program because they've built the program into a respectable state. What Mark D'Antonio has done in the past 10 years. So they deserve that respect. But this season has been an out-and-out disaster. It's beyond a train wreck. It's like you mentioned, it's in the pit. I'll go a step further. It's in the Bay of Pigs, basically. Because if it's not one thing that's wrong with this team, it's another. They seem to get a good start offensively, but what? Defense can't hold a lead. Or when the defense looks to be, or something, it can be in reverse the way it works. The defense can be good job, a good first half, but the offense can't do jack squat. It's your offensive line. The offensive line stinks. Until this week, they virtually had no running game. L.J. Scott basically there was an MIA, an APB put out on him after the Notre Dame game, where he essentially disappeared because I don't know. He virtually made little to no impact at all from that point on until now. Essentially, finally came around to a point, to a certain extent, more than an extent. Rather, had 128 yards and that touchdown, as you mentioned, Taylor. But as a whole, it's just a complete mess. Offensive line can't block, can't protect the quarterback. On defense, they can't tackle. And for a Mark D'Antonio team, seeing them rack up the amount of penalties that they've had week after week, especially in this game, 7. Oh my goodness, no. And not to mention Riley Bulla. He himself, I get he's trying to work some rest off for the injury that he had early in the year that shelled him for a couple of games, most notably Wisconsin. But even still, you got to be more smarter than that. 3 personal fouls, including a targeting call that got him kicked out of the game. Now, on many instances where I think the targeting rule is such a missed call by the refs, this one they got it right. There was no reason why Bulla should have had his head up that high when trying to make that kind of tackle, especially when he's a senior, for God's sakes, okay? And it should be instinctive in him right now. When you see a receiver coming at you that high with the ball, go low as you can. I'm not saying go at his knees, but for goodness sakes, you know why they have this rule for a reason, and you still put yourself in that spot. It goes beyond physical with the team now. It's strictly mental. I don't know what it is, but where someone going on in the locker room, are they having our own personal mutiny against D'Antonio, or maybe some of the coaches on the staff, they don't like who D'Antonio has with the staff? I don't know, but it's translating big time, bigly, as Donald Trump would say, on the football field, and it's beyond disgraceful to look at, because you would think, okay, yeah, they lost some guys from last year, they're going to take a little bit of a step back, but nobody was expecting them to see this kind of step back. We're talking maybe 1, maybe 2, but not 5 steps back, okay? So as the record stands right now, they're 2-5. They've yet to get a conference win. This is probably a little bit of a spoiler alert for my preview, but I highly doubt it's going to come this week. Even if it's at home, I don't see anything remotely changing for what they can do to help them prepare for this Michigan team. So you're looking at 2-6, right? looking at 2-6 right in the face. You still have Ohio State yet to play on this game, and you still got a Penn State team who just had its biggest win in years. They just got through on Saturday, so you're looking at 3 more potential losses. Right off the bat. So if you're lucky, maybe you can get to 4-8. Who knows? If they somehow lose the rest of their schedule and finish out at 2-10, I'll be even shocked and flat out saddened because see what D'Antonio's done over this past decade or so. It's very uncomfortable to say the least. See this type of season for them. You would kind of expect something along the lines of 2012. Where they had going through their struggles with Andrew Maxwell as quarterback, but nothing this severe. We haven't seen them be this bad since the days of John L. Smith and Bobby Williams. Okay, and that's pretty damn low. That's pretty damn bad. So everything is in disarray right now, from the coaches, the players, the execution, blocking, tackling, quarterback play, running back play. Defense can't stop anyone. Offense has their ups and downs. Nobody's showing any proper technique or fundamentals or just care. Mental awareness, period, is being shown from this whole team, and I gave them as much hope as I can. I didn't want to be seen as either too pessimistic or, oh yeah, you're just a Wolverine, so you're just hating on them because you're hating on them. No, as you've seen today, I picked them how many times over the past few weeks to see if they can get anything going, and they've completely shit the bed every single time. So if that's the case, I'm going to have to go as negative as I can now. It's beyond time for that. So I got to call it as I see it. They fucking stink right now.
Yeah.
He freaking sucks.
Just absolutely terrible. They won the first 2 games, then they lose 5 straight. One of them against a great team in Wisconsin, but the other 4, pretty easy teams to beat. And Michigan State still finds ways to lose. Northwestern. It gives Spartans fans aneurysms.
Oh my goodness. The Indiana lost, the Northwestern lost. You even struggled against Furman of all teams. Yeah, you won, but you put up that type of performance against Furman? And then at Notre Dame, that loss, I've gone over before how that Notre Dame loss looks very insignificant. It feels like a loss because Notre Dame has been very subpar this year. They even lost to Duke. Not Duke basketball, Duke football. So this has been as much of a horror of horrors of a season as you can get so far from Michigan State. And they've yet to play this staunch, just amazingly built Michigan team yet. There's still that on the way, and Ohio State, and Penn State at the end of the year.
Yeah, and didn't Northwestern lose to Illinois State in a low-scoring affair?
9-7.
Oh,
you lose to that team? Oh, man. That team puts up 7 points against whoever they lost to, and then they come into your place, your field, and drop 54 on you. Somebody should have been fired after that game, but because, D'Antonio, whether it's in his nature or not, you probably didn't feel like you want to do that mid-year. But, essentially, in all intents and purposes, the season was over right then and there. Right then and there. And this is now just the post-mortem part of the equation.
Man, talk about the Spartans going from Top Gun to Pop Gun. Just like that. My God. Are you fucking kidding me, Michigan State? Are you fucking kidding us? Well, once again, Spartans in East Lansing against the Wolverines. Wolverines are going to rout them. Period.
We'll get more into it in depth with our football preview, but once again, I quote
just an early teaser though.
I quote the great Brock Lesnar again on this. Like when this game plays, once kickoff starts at noon this Saturday, it's Hard Stadium. Quote Brock Lesnar, it's going to be ugly, people. Trust me, it will be.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, moving forward.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
My Central Michigan Chippewas were held completely scoreless in the first half, and then they started the second half by digging their own hole even deeper before trying to come back, and they paid the price. They lost 31-17 at the Toledo Rockets, who are now 6-1, or 7-1, whichever. 6-1. 6-1. Chippewas dropped to 5-3 and 2-2 in the MAC. Team stats: total yards 404 to 344 in favor of Toledo. CMU put up only 97 rushing yards altogether. Time of possession: Rockets 33 minutes flat, Chips 27 seconds flat. Turnovers, only 2 of them belong to CMU. 2 interceptions, 1 interception by Cooper Rush, and the other one a lost fumble. First downs 23-18 Toledo. Cooper Rush, besides his interception, 18 for 31 for 229 yards and a touchdown. Not bad, in fact, good. Devin Spalding on the ground, 10 carries for 65 yards. Jahray Hayes, 8 rushes for just 18 yards. Jahray Hayes really has to pick up his shit.
He freaking sucks.
Because he's not. That was just pathetic statistically. Tyler Conklin, 5 receptions for 74 yards and a score for the Toledo Rockets. Logan Woodside, 23 of 32 for 264 yards and 4 touchdowns. All those 4 touchdown passes to Cody Thompson, who wound up with 7 catches for 122 stripes. Seems as if nobody covered Cody Thompson in the end zone when the Rockets were knocking on the door. And CMU's defensive front just couldn't get to Logan Woodside, who had all kinds of time while fading back to pass, scrambling. Their defense didn't do too great of a job. They gave up 31 points. Not terrible, but there's still plenty of room for improvement for CMU's defense. Even though they played a great team in the Toledo Rockets, they're trying to catch the Western Michigan Broncos for the Mid-American Conference Western Division. And right now, the Rockets are like at least a game behind those Broncos, which I'll get to in a moment. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, quick correction. They're 2 games behind.
2, yes. Thank you.
Was one of those, of course, include the head-to-head matchup. So you want to go into realms of technicality or spiritually or whatever. They're kind of 3 games back, if you want to count that head-to-head as a game against them, for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also, Corey Jones, 7 catches for 85 yards. Kareem Hunt, 20 rushes for 87 yards. CMU, once again, just completely or totally stalled on the running game. The only advantage they had on offense was passing. So, once again, clean up your fucking running game, please. With that loss, the Chippewas dropped to 5-3. They are home against the 2-6 Kent State Golden Flashes Saturday at noon. The Western Michigan Broncos at Waldo Stadium beat the Eastern Michigan Eagles 45-31 to stay undefeated and improve to 8-0. Eastern Michigan drops to 5-3 as well. Total yards, Western outgained Eastern 551 to 461. 2 turnovers apiece. Zach Terrell of the Broncos, 29 of 35 for 398 yards. Impressive. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Brogan Roback, 29 of 45 for 319 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Jarvion Franklin for the Brown Gold and Black, 22 carries for 114 yards and a TD in Kalamazoo. The Broncos head out from Kalamazoo to Muncie, Indiana, and play the Ball State Cardinals, who are 4-4. That doesn't kick off until Tuesday. That's next week, Tuesday, at 8 on November 1st on ESPN2. You got to catch that. For EMU, they return home to Ypsilanti and play the 2-6 Miami, Ohio Redhawks Saturday at 3:30. So that's all for college football. Now to pro football.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Very close game to say the least. The Lions found another way to win, obviously. They beat the Washington Redskins 20-17 to sweep their 3-game homestand at Ford Field. Their offense really sputtered. Then the team fell behind with over a minute left because of their head coach, Jim Caldwell, not calling any timeouts on former Michigan State quarterback Kirk Cousins' Redskins' ensuing drive late in the game. It was tied at 3 at halftime. But fast forwarding to the late portions of the fourth quarter, fourth and final frame, Cousins took it himself from 19 yards out into the house with 1:05 left, giving the Redskins a 17-13 lead. But the Lions wisely used, I think, 2 of their timeouts while keeping their drive alive consistently, and Matthew Stafford threw the game-winning touchdown pass 18 yards to Anquan Bolden with 16 seconds left, and the Lions defense did the rest of the job to seal the game. The Skins outgained the Lions totally in yardage, 417 to 344. Only 2 turnovers of the game. They belong, both of them, to Washington on 2 lost fumbles. They fumbled the ball 3 times, by the way. Matthew Stafford for Detroit, 18 of 29 for 266 yards and the game-winning touchdown pass to Bolden. Kirk Cousins, 30 of 39, dangerous statistics for 300 yards and a score. For the rest of the Lions statistics, Justin Forsett got the start at running back, got 8 carries for just 33 yards. Not too impressive at all, to say the least. Marvin Jones, 4 catches for 94 yards. Good, but not great. Zach Zenner, first NFL touchdown, finally, on 9 carries for just 29 yards. Golden Tate III, 6 receptions for 93 yards. Bolden himself, who got the game winner, 3 catches for 28 yards. For the Skins, Jamison Crowder, 7 receptions for 108 yards. Vernon Davis, 6 catches for 79, and Chris Thompson on the ground, 12 carries for 73. Darius Slay left the game with a hamstring injury in the second quarter, would not return. But Ed, just the same old story, just like in the first game of the season at Indianapolis, where Jim Caldwell again didn't even consider calling at least one timeout when the Lions' defense's backs were against the wall, and so was their lead, and they fell behind before they scored to win it right in the end.
Yeah, not even that. I mean, it was early on in the game. What, first series of the game, there's a decision whether or not you want to go for it or not. I think that decision, I think it was the right move to punt, and that's the type of situation regarding field position. But still, he had to waste a timeout just to make his damn decision. Oh, God. Just another unfortunate, or rather fortunate in my case, because it keeps proving our point of how this man does not deserve to be a head coach for any team, let alone this team. But you got to hand it to what this team is able to accomplish, what they got done in some instances, in spite of some of the decision making of their head coach. As a unit overall, the running game, obviously, this team has no running game to speak of whatsoever. But still, I think in certain instances, they looked as good as they could be, knowing how interchangeable this offensive line has been. Knowing how many running backs you literally had to bring in off the street to help you out with this. The running game did as much as they could, but obviously the real star of this game was Matthew Stafford. He was able to do, once again for another week, essentially carrying this team on his back. I'll get into it a little bit, but essentially he is the only reason why this team is in the position where they're at right now, because their defense still bad. Another putrid display of third down efficiency where they couldn't get off the damn field. Then they gave up. They were 9 for 15. Washington went 9 for 15 on third down conversions. 9 for 15. That is insanity, pure insanity. Once again giving up high percentages. 30 for 39. That's inexplicable, inexcusable. I would say. I could correct myself. Not to mention, seeing what Case Keenum did, the week before, going 20 straight completions. This is a bad defensive team. It looked good at the start, seeing the pass rush finally get some type of pressure on the quarterback. We hadn't seen that since, Tennessee in week 2. But still, after that, they only could manage 2 sacks, whereas Washington actually got 3 sacks on Stafford. So even still, defense failed their job in that department. We all know, they still have a weakness for tight ends. Vernon Davis caught a big catch out near the sideline that set up the touchdown that cut it to 13-10 early in the fourth. So once again, this is a team that has shown a penchant weakness for tight ends in any and all capacity to once again bite them in the ass, and it showed it reared its ugly head once more. But despite all that, knowing the poise of where he's been in this spot before. Matthew Stafford, using his timeouts, using his field, using his arm and his feet on that final drive. Now, as remember, to get them into field position, he found a good spot, fired a good pass over the middle, and then on the very next play, seeing nobody there, saw the open field ahead of him, used his smarts, used his legs, scrambled out, got a good chunk of yards for a first down, and into Washington territory as well. So, knowing his awareness of where he was in that spot in that moment, I couldn't be more happy and proud of Stafford.
Now think about this. All of the Lions' wins thus far this season, 4 of them, 4-3 is their record, have been the same way, have been won the same way. You blow a lead late and then come back to win in the end with a score, whether it's a field goal by Matt Prater or a touchdown from Matthew Stafford to Anquan Bolden. The first 3 wins were on a game-winning field goal, each of them, and then the 4th game, a game-winning touchdown because you were down by 4. But all of that because Jim Caldwell did not call a timeout when the Lions' defense was having their backs against the wall, was trying to protect the lead, and they blew it with about a minute to go, or less, or more, whichever way you slice it, depending what exactly you see on the time clock. But it's just the same old story. Jim Caldwell just wants to save all of his three timeouts for when the Lions fall behind but are trying to come back to win, which they actually have done.
Yeah, but how many times can you rely on that throughout the year? Eventually, your luck's going to run out. We saw how it happened and how it worked out negatively against Tennessee in that loss. So you can't keep going to that well. How many times can you go into that well before it finally come up empty, looking for water?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just stupid to not use a timeout when your team's on defense trying to protect a lead.
Are you out of your mind?
Right. At very least, take the time out to give them a chance to breathe, catch their breath, gain some energy back, and also set them up. Hey, set the strategy. Here's what happened for each scenario. Force the field goal, or if you give up the touchdown, set up your offense for that, or try to play for the win to get that stop. But he didn't matter those things because he didn't call timeout.
And that's what you got to do. You got to burn at least one timeout and try to come up with a defensive strategy or defensive play to try to seal the win the other way instead of trying to come up with a walk-off score. Sometimes you got to shake things up a bit.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I do appreciate his aggressiveness in going for more on fourth down. I think that's him knowing he's being aware that it's a safe bet that his job is on the line this season, so he's coaching like his life depends on it. But other than that, I really don't see that much of a change into what gives me enough confidence that I want to see this guy come back and get an extension. No, I just don't see it.
Mm-hmm. So the Lions end their 3-game homestand going 3 for 3. Now they go on the road down south of the border to the Houston Texans at Reliance Stadium. That kicks off this Sunday at 1 on Fox. We'll preview that in our Football in the Mitten preview edition on episode 236 of this program, the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, with yours truly and Ed Smith. Lions made a trade after the win. It involved linebacker Kyle Van Noy. He went to the Patriots along with a future 7th-round draft pick, and in return, they picked up a 6th-round draft pick, which is a little bit better than a 7th-round draft pick. But all in all, it seems fairly good because Kyle Van Noy just hasn't developed. And not necessarily a genius move, but kind of more like just the right move, just fair enough.
It's what more can you do? Because either he's either hurt, or whenever he's not hurt, he's not playing that well.
Injury prone.
It's very lather, rinse, repeat here in this situation. So what more can you do? Try to get some value as much as you can. So the fact that they got an extra draft pick out of this, hats off to him in that regard. But I'm not crying any tears over losing Kyle Van Noy. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much does this really hurt your linebacker? Your depth at linebacker, because you don't know when Andre Levy's going to come back this year anyway, and B, you can't stop anyone to begin with, and primarily, in terms of stopping tight ends. So what? You go from a team who can't stop tight ends to a team that can't stop tight ends even more, if that makes sense. So, this doesn't exactly be a type of move that cripples your team in any way, shape, or fashion.
Right. So with that, it's time to switch from football to another sport, and that is hockey. The Red Wings have now stretched their winning streak to 5 games instead of just 1. They went into Madison Square Garden and nipped the New York Rangers 2-1. Drew Miller with a late game-winning goal. Thomas Vanek with his 3rd of the year. Jimmy Howard stood on his head and almost allowed 2 goals, but allowed just 1. that what would have been a second Rangers goal was waved off due to a touch with a high stick. But the Red Wings defense helped Jimmy Howard out, and he did his thing. And the Red Wings found a way to beat the Rangers at Madison Square Garden for the first time since I don't know when. And then they beat the Nashville Predators at Joe Louis Arena 5-3. It was a bit of a wild game. One goal for each Red Wing, including well, we can forget that, but it was a wild game. But then they blanked the San Jose Sharks 3-0 behind Jimmy Howard, with Jimmy Howard in net. Peter Mrazek starting in Friday's game, but Jimmy Howard blanked the San Jose Sharks offense. Gustav Nyquist scored 2 goals, and Andreas Athanasiou finally got on the board for the season with his first of the year. A rocket of a slap shot in the third period, and that was the dagger of that one. And then on Tuesday, they beat the Carolina Hurricanes 4-2 with Peter Mrazek in net. Mrazek did a little better. Still needs to improve a little bit on his goals against average per game. Dylan Larkin scored 2 goals against the Hurricanes. Thomas Vanek scored yet another goal. And then Andreas Athanasiou scored his second goal of the game. 2 goals in his last 2 games. But he's had a couple assists at least. And even Steve Ott finally got his first point as a Red Wing, which is an assist. But that's all Steve Ott has had.
Yeah, hey, a contribution is a contribution. I'll take it.
Yep. I mean, Steve Ott, only a $900,000 making 1-year contract veteran. The Red Wings have on their roster instead of Anthony Mantha, who still has been red hot on the power play. The Griffins haven't played since last Saturday. They don't play until Friday. So a heck of a week off, a surprising week off for the Grand Rapids Griffins. We don't get to see them play at all after a great start that the Griffins have put up in their season thus far right now. But Mrazek's still doing his thing continuously, despite his shaky, a bit of a shaky performance against the Boston Bruins. He started off really shaky in Tampa Bay, and then he only allowed 1 goal against the Senators, but he allowed 3 against the Predators and 2 against the Hurricanes, slightly improving with the exception of that 1 goal against performance at home against Ottawa in their home opener. And for Jimmy Howard, again, he's only allowed 1 goal this season. That was in New York. He blanked the San Jose Sharks last Saturday. Those were his only 2 starts. Got to hand it to the guy.
Yeah, I know you've been bagging on Jimmy for a better part of over a year now.
Yeah,
but
now
he's accepted his role.
It's gotten even better.
But he's accepted his role as the backup. He knows Mrazek is a starting goaltender, but he's still showing everybody, hey, whenever you need me to contribute, I'm right here for you. I've given you as a lot of years as a starter, so I know the experience and know how to handle it, what type of pressure. So whenever you feel like Peter needs to sit or he needs a break or whatever, I'm your guy. So he's showing that, and possibly, don't want to get too ahead of myself. Showing himself as having possibly good value at a future trade of sorts. Who's to say? But if he keeps playing like this, he could come up as a very as a needed player around the deadline. So you never know. That could always be a real possibility as well.
Uh-huh. So the Red Wings go into St. Louis and play the Blues at Scottrade Center. That game's going to cut off what would have been a very long homestand at Joe Louis Arena on their final season there. Then they're home. That's Thursday at 8 on Fox Sports Detroit, and then they're home against the Boston Bruins Saturday at 7. Home against the Florida Panthers Sunday at 5 on Fox Sports Detroit Plus when the Pistons play the Bucks at 6 at the Palace. Then the Red Wings head to Philadelphia and play the Flyers Wednesday at 8 on NBCSN's Wednesday Night Rivalry. The Red Wings haven't won in Philadelphia since '97 still. How many times have we got to say this?
Too many.
Yeah. Please end the fucking drought right now, this year. That's all we ask. Just for all time's sake.
They got 2 chances, one on the 2nd and then the other one next week on the 8th, on election night. How about that?
Oh, wow. The sooner the better, so don't blow them, please. And in fact, I'm desperately asking for a 2-for-2 for the Red Wings in Philadelphia.
I think it'll be okay to get at least one. Let's get that first one out the way before we start asking for a 2-for.
Yeah. So with that, let's, speaking of the Pistons, why don't we go ahead and recap their season opener here.
Left sideline, 3, and he answers.
They lose in Toronto 109-91 to the Raptors. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 4 points in just 39 minutes. Andre Drummond, 2 for 6 of the free throw line, the last I heard. Those are the negatives, but Andre Drummond, from elsewhere besides the line, not too shabby. But another thing that has been the Pistons' flaw is their defense. They keep allowing over 100 points per game, and this continues as they allow 109 points put up on the board by the Raptors.
Yeah. Last year was more so on the perimeter end of things, but for this game, at least tonight, it was more so of what Toronto was able to do and get them inside the paint. Now, you can attribute some of that to the fact that Andre Drummond, he had to sit for a while throughout the first half. A, because he got in foul trouble, got 2 fouls in the first quarter, but also B, he had to get himself back together because he took a blatant elbow right in the face of Jonas Valanciunas, who, by the way, did not get called for a foul, if I saw that correctly. Speaking of which, minor off-topic rant here, I thought some of the officiating was a little bit questionable, a little bit ticky-tacky. I thought, I know Toronto's good. They're a damn good team. They obviously showcased it tonight. Runner-up in the Eastern Conference last year, but it was a little bit fishy, knowing the amount of times they went to the line. I think even in the first half, Jonas Valanciunas himself went to the line 13 times, converted 11, whereas the Pistons only went to the strike 10 times. So that's one player compared to a whole team. I know you got to call contact in the paint, but even still, a little bit's too much. Too much is too much in my view. So that was one thing that helped them to their advantage in one aspect. Another one, obviously, you saw DeMar DeRozan. He just went the hell off. 40 points on 7 of 27 shooting. It's clearly evident, if it wasn't before, it definitely is now, how valuable he is to their team with him and Lowry, and now, of course, with Valanciunas. That's basically your 3 biggest players that can help lead this team throughout this year and in years to come. As in terms of keeping them as a strong contender in the Eastern Conference. So, didn't have too much hopes going into this one, but you would hope they would have performed a little bit better. primarily in the paint. They also got abused big time in the rebounding department. I believe Toronto was plus 11. They out-rebounded Detroit by 11 boards. That was probably, I believe 3 times or so last year.
Too many offensive rebounds. Pistons, that's what I saw.
Yeah, just rebounds, period. Even Detroit couldn't get their own chance or second chance points opportunities. So it contributed, fast breaks, bad transition. Toronto was just running out the floor on them almost. That third quarter was just, in many ways, a little bit disgusting. They picked up their offense a little bit. They scored 25 points in that third quarter, but still DeRozan was just going off. He had 21 by himself on Toronto's 28 in that third quarter. So between that, plus the rebounds, like I said, back on topic to the rebound point, only 3 times last year, it was pointed out astutely by Detroit Bad Boys on Twitter. You can follow them on Twitter at Detroit Bad Boys. That's the SB Nation affiliate for the Pistons. Only 3 times last year that the Pistons out-rebounded by 10 or more boards. Tonight, of course, like I mentioned before, Toronto won the rebound battle by 11. So it was very rare to see, but you wish it wouldn't have happened on this occasion. So there is quite a number of things they need to tone up on. Obviously, of course, with Andre Drummond in his free throws, that's never, that's a whirlwind, a whole bigger can of worms in and of itself. But there was some positives, believe it or not. In all this trek of shit, there was some positives. Marcus Morris and Tobias Harris, seemingly the only players that gave a shit out there. They came through, especially Harris. He had 22 points at 8 of 13 shooting. Perfect from the free throw line, by the way. Boban Marjanovic didn't have quite an impressive night for him. Had a couple of fouls. He did have a block, though. I will give him that. The newly acquired Piston by way of the offer sheet that he signed to leave San Antonio in the offseason. So he had a block. So that was probably the good thing going for Boban. Other than that, so-so night. But still, I can only imagine how pissed off Stan Van Gundy was throughout this whole game and after the game was over, to where, much major improvements need to be made for sure. You already had a little bit of a disadvantage knowing that Reggie Jackson, your starting point guard, is out for at least 8 weeks or so due to his issues with his knee. So that again, thrust pressure on the likes of Ish Smith to carry the load. Remember, he came into the season with the expectation of being the backup. Now you're telling me for a good chunk of the season he has to be the starting point guard, the primary point guard. That's going to hamper your offense a little bit. So expect in that time frame see the offense being played more through Tobias Harris, for instance, instead of being played through Smith. Smith can still facilitate the ball, set up his teammates with his passes, because that's what it was brought here for it to be. But in terms of getting your offense going with shots and whatnot, that's probably going to be left to Morris. And then, of course, when Jackson gets back, he can take on that role, or share it rather, with not Morris, but Harris. And Drummond, as long as he's not in foul trouble, he can always get you those points, those nasty points in the paint. And with him being out early on in the game, that allowed Toronto to set the tone and they never looked back in terms of establishing their presence inside the paint and at the rim.
Yeah, there's a lot to clean up, especially the offensive rebounding department, the free throw shooting by Andre Drummond. KCP, man, he really needs to pick it up. Again, 4 points, 39 minutes.
He freaking sucks.
I like him. I thought he looked very good against Cleveland in the playoff series, but come on, can't play like that.
You're better than
I know
that.
it's open tonight, but you can't play like this all season and then expect the team to turn around and give you a contract extension worth $20 million the next off season. No, you just can't do that. You're going to have to earn that money. And tonight was just not a good night, flat out.
Right. I'm sure he'll improve at least a little bit, but I'm not so sure about a whole lot, because there's still a lot of improvement for KCP, especially from the 3-point line, and he's just got to pick it up, and he's got to. I'm sure he'll score more points than 4, for God's sake. 4 points in a single game. 39
Once he got paid
minutes.
it, he damn well.
Wow. So the Pistons start a 3-game homestand Friday at home against the Orlando Magic at the Palace at 7:30. Then the Bucks come into town Sunday at 6, Milwaukee. Then the New York Knicks Tuesday at 7:30 before the Pistons visit the Brooklyn Nets Wednesday at 7:30. Before their regular season began, the Pistons signed 7'6" center Mamdou Ndiaye.
Oh, man!
Claimed point guard Bino Udry off waivers and waived point guard Ray McCallum and Lorenzo Brown, apparently. So, do we even know Bino Udry? Do you have a scouting report on him?
Not too much of a scout report on him. I do know he is a veteran. That's one reason why Pistons and Van Gundy wanted him, given that veteran presence, to help them with their point guard depth while Jackson is nursing his injury.
They're trying to pull a Ken Holland.
You know,
no offense, but...
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. This was more so for basically an insurance grab.
It was a joke.
If you want to call it that way. He had the experience, whereas Ray McCallum unfortunately did not. So it's kind of a no-brainer in that instance. Stan Van Gundy made the comment, so I think he knows what he's doing in terms of getting that.
Yeah, I was joking about that.
Oh, okay. But in terms of this Ndiaye kid, my goodness, 7'6". Obviously, very, very, very raw. He is an absolute project. When you have a dude that's 7'6", I think he's always going to be seen as a project player. Drummond was I think that term was used to describe Andre Drummond when the Pistons selected him, who he's turned into so far, minus free throws and the maturity. But still, I digress. This kid can give you something here. 7'6", he better. Obviously give you some rim protection. God knows we needed some of that tonight. So that's always, always a good thing to have. So, we'll see where it goes. Will he be able to contribute? I wouldn't say he will contribute immediately this year. He could get a call up or so by the end of the season, but if he, develops down in Grand Rapids or whatever, I think, and
with the drive,
seem as if it's seen as respectable enough, yeah, he has a good shot of possibly getting a roster spot next year. You could probably say, yeah, hey, bye-bye Aaron Baines, keep Boban and hello Ndiaye. That's a good, very, very formidable tall threat at the rim. You got a guy who's 7'3" in Boban and a guy in 7'6" in Ndiaye. Good Lord.
Now, in one of the Pistons groups that I am in, a couple others were saying that Ndiaye needs more improvement. I don't. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I think, whenever you have a guy as tall as him, he doesn't have that much experience being on an NBA team. There's a lot of fundamentals and things you got to work out. Can he dribble well? Can he back up in the post well? Because this isn't some minute, scrawny, Division III scrub he's going against. These are legit players. This is the National Basketball Association.
Yeah. So
these are the best. So you can't be essentially you're going from a big fish in a small pond to a big fish in a giant ocean. So he's got to work up and sharpen up his skills at every facet. Dribbling, not necessarily the easy ones, the rebounding, the dunks, but just dribbling, post game, develop a jump shot, and try not to be an absolute statue on defense.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Those are good points, Ed. So, hopefully he develops really fast so the Pistons can use him because they need him. So, one other piece of news that we need to get out of the way in terms of the Pistons, and it's really huge.
Big.
The Pistons are possibly going to be moving downtown next to the Tigers and Lions with the Red Wings. An announcement, according to a source, could come in a few days. Inside that source from Crane's Detroit Business, there were talks with Ilitch that the Pistons and Red Wings could both play inside Little Caesars Arena after it's being completed. The Pistons starting in the 2017-2018 arena. So, this is all the Pistons could afford. This is all the Ilitches could afford in terms of the Red Wings and Pistons and all that stuff.
I think this is a prime opportunity. If they were ever going to make this move that fans have been talking about for years and years, I think now was the best time because you got a brand new state-of-the-art arena and overall, whole area that they're, nicknamed the district that they're creating in the heart of downtown. Why wouldn't you want to get in a piece of that pie? And also the fact that, remember at All-Star a few months ago where someone it wasn't Jeff Moss himself, who you can follow on Twitter at Jeff Moss DSR, but it was apparently a person who knew a relative, this person who knew this person, where the case may be, who knew about the ins and outs of what construction was going on with the arena, mentioned the fact that basketball locker rooms were possibly being installed. And we get the news last month that maybe they're working, they had an agreement to possibly build a new practice facility right next to the Little Caesars Arena. So now you hear this news. It seems like an inevitability that they will make that announcement. Who knows? They'll probably make it at the home opener on Friday to commemorate, hey, appreciate all that you've done for us, for good folks in Auburn Hills with this nice place with a palace. But, in terms of logical sense, geographical sense, and I think possibly potentially financial sense, yeah. The Pistons, they got to be in downtown. You are the Detroit Pistons for a reason. You're not the Oakland County Pistons or the Auburn Hills Pistons. You're the Detroit Pistons. So, makes sense. Play downtown in Detroit.
And I'm thinking of a bonus question for which exact location in downtown Detroit should the Pistons play along with the Red Wings, Lions, and Tigers, but we'll get to that during our 10 questions segment to wrap up the program. But now we must turn our focuses to baseball, and we get not 2 but 3 Tigers sources here.
That one is long gone.
Big news here. The Tigers are now listening to trade offers for all their star players and everybody else. They are unlikely to sign right fielder J.D. Martinez, and according to ESPN's MLB Rumors Central, the Tigers are trying to shop Justin Upton, their left fielder. So those are 2 examples of their total fire sale that the Tigers are now putting up, and this is. And I'm thinking this could be at the start of a tanking process. But Al Avila, their general manager, wants the Tigers to be younger and leaner, and this was his concept of improvement for the Tigers. If they want to make the playoffs and maybe even make a deeper run, but we're not so sure if that'll work.
Well, in terms of making that deeper run, you want to make that sale now, to set you up for possibly 2 or 3 years down the road, so you can probably make that deep run again. Yeah, I'd be willing to agree with you. Justin Upton will be one of the guys I'd see they try to shop. Maybe Cameron Maben with the type of season that he had. Outside chance, maybe Ian Kinsler as well. I'm trying not to get too much into, trying to be, trying to be reasonable yet selfish at the same time, because I don't want him to trade everybody. I don't want to see Mickey be traded or Justin Verlander be traded, or if they can help it, JD Martinez be traded. But if it comes down to it, it's got to happen. In terms of like you said, for all intents and purposes, Al Avila said he's cutting payroll. So what better way to do that than getting rid of some of these mammoth contracts, or at least some of these these multitudes of contracts to all these players. So whether it be a Justin Upton, a Cameron Maybin, an Ian Kinsler, or even a JD Martinez, or maybe a Cabrera or Verlander, that's what I have to take. That's what's going to have to take. In terms of tanking, I wouldn't say tank job in terms of, now if they got rid of Verlander and or Cabrera, then yes, I'd be full agreement with you. But for now, I still foresee them still being on the roster for as long as possible. I guess you could say it's unwritten, it's unsaid, but I think those two are the untouchables in many men's eyes. JD, you can make it a good case for him, but compared to Verlander and Cabrera, he's not that safe. So there's a lot of ways the Tigers can go. But if you're going to do that, you better be getting one, good picks, and in my view, also some good salary in return too. Obviously, you're going to get clearing space because you're trading away all these contracts, but we got to make sure we're not getting swindled or hoodwinked in this deal either.
Right. And you never know what to expect from Al Avila, but I'm going to be skeptical and say it's not going to work because you know what? This the retaining of manager Brad Ausmus is the one thing Al Avila always wanted to do, along with the rest of the front office, the rest of all the players, the rest of the coaching staff. They think Ausmus has done a tremendous job, especially managing the bullpen, which definitely is not the case. I mean, come on. This is total over-loyalty and just plain ineptitude. And this is just awful. It's been awful. It's been that awful for years. And speaking of awful, the Tigers have rehired their returning hitting coach, Lloyd McClendon, as their hitting coach, and that, I assume, their old school philosophy of baseball is staying put within the organization, and that just doesn't help at all. Period.
Yeah, I made a joke on it when I shared the news on Facebook. In this week's edition of bringing the band back together, it's not so much of a. It's very safe, very, very, very safe, very conservative in terms of going back to what you do instead of trying to be experimental. But I think they had such a shell shock with how the bad job Wally Joyner was doing. They went, let's just go back to our comfort level. Let's go to our safety valve in a sense. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we were going to talk about the rest of the Doug Fister story, but I guess that's not needed, except for he and Justin Verlander got into a disagreement in terms of team chemistry. Fister went to Dombrowski to complain, the general manager, that Verlander was damaging team chemistry and morale. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to mention that anyway, at the very least, because Jeff Moss broke the rest of the truth about Doug Fister being traded by Dave Dombrowski during the 2013-2014 offseason, which was 3 years ago. Doug Fister got traded to the Washington Nationals for Robbie Ray, Steve Lombardozzi, and Ian Kroll, which was a horrible trade. Jeff Moss believes that the team chemistry issue manifested itself when Fister and other players became upset that Verlander uses his clout to get director of team travel Tyson Steele transferred from working with the Tigers to a new gig at Little Caesars. Now, Steele was a very popular figure in the Tigers clubhouse, with many of the players giving Steele huge tips for assisting them with accommodations, and some players it appears Pfister was one of them, were incredulous that JV would get Steele transferred when he had done nothing wrong. Verlander had moved on to a supermodel or actress or actor, whichever, and Steele became Youn's shoulder to cry on. From what Moss has been told, one thing led to another. They began dating and are now married. Verlander and Kate Upton as supermodel and actress. Steele had done nothing nefarious, and Verlander's alleged spiteful behavior rubbed some players the wrong way. And since then, this is another thing that has gone wrong with this organization. Not just with Al Avila and Brad Ausmus, but with Justin Verlander and the team chemistry. You put two team two team chemistries together, and you have double dysfunctionality in the double D in Detroit. And this is like a double aneurysm.
Very unfortunate if this was true about Verlander's behavior in that regard.
It was. It was true.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah. So I'm going to post that article one more time on my Facebook page right now, and have the rest of my friends on Facebook follow and read it. Just, man, they'll be shocked to hear it. So, with all that Tigers news out of the way, it's finally time for 10 questions. So Ed, are you ready?
Ready when you are, Tim. So just go ahead and let him rip.
It's time for the 10 questions segment on the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker.
Question number 1, do the Michigan Wolverines have the upper hand going into their final game of the season against the Ohio State Buckeyes in Columbus as of right now?
As of right now, I will say no. Because I think, granted, Ohio State did just lose in devastating fashion to Penn State. But let's got to remember a few factors here. Even though this was the same team that Michigan quite handled 48-10 a month ago, there's a few things to take consideration. A, this game with Ohio State, it was at Penn State's in Happy Valley, not not Columbus, whereas Michigan had that advantage. B, this is at night, so you know how crazy that place can be. It's crazy as is, Joe Pa apologists and all, but it's even crazier at night, primetime game, big time opponent in town. Ohio State had that working against them, plus the fact that they also just worked the back end of 2 straight games on the road at night in very hostile territories. They just escaped the week before in Camp Randall, so it seemed very, you had to keep your eye out on that for them to see if they were going to do it 2 weeks in a row, so that was very draining on them. And also, Penn State, they were much more, they had some health problems on the defense side of the ball, as opposed to against Michigan, as opposed to in this game against Ohio State. So, as of now, no, I won't say that U of M has the advantage, even though they're at the higher ranking and the better record. Things could all change, because remember, we're still a month away, less than 30 days now, in fact, from the clash in Columbus. So a lot can still change between now and November 26th.
Next question.
Question number 2, will Michigan State Spartans football head coach Mark D'Antonio blow up his staff mid-season, or will he wait until the year is over before making any decisions on personnel?
I say, knowing the type of person that D'Antonio is, if he's going to make any changes, any decision, he would wait till the end of the year. You would have thought, hey, the loss against Northwestern, the loss here against Maryland, maybe what you're facing against Michigan coming up, this would be a good chance to send the message to say, hey, we're not going to take this shit lying down. But knowing the type of person D'Antonio seems to be, loyalty seems very high on his morale, on his list. So, and it's rates on his scale of decency in his view. So he figures that, the least that he can do for his coaches is to at least give them a chance to finish out the year as much as they possibly can, and then make that the decision, as difficult it might be, make that decision at the end of the year, in the off season, and do it in the middle of the year when things are just so in such disarray.
Next question.
Question number 3, do the Central Michigan Chippewas need a new running backs coach, or do they need a new offensive line coach, or try to find some way to improve their offensive line?
Probably O-line, because I think if you have a good base with your offensive line, that can set the tone for your running backs. They always say, you win the war of trenches, win the war in the trenches in the football game, gives you your best shot of winning the game. As of now, they're ranked 100th in the nation in terms of averaging rushing yards per game, averaging 140.5. I attribute that more to the fact that the offensive line is just not that good. So if you trim up your offensive line, it gives you not just better quarterback protection, but also opens up better holes for your running backs to run through. So I would vote for the offensive line.
Next question.
Question number 4, does Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford deserve MVP talk?
I'm going to say yes. I've been very unabashed in my support for Matthew Stafford over the years. And this year, knowing what he was going up against, first right off the bat, no Calvin Johnson, and what he's going through during the season, whether it be going by running back by committee, a constant reshuffling of the offensive line, an offense that continuously drops passes for him. I believe the Lions are now tied for first in the whole league with 16 drop passes on the season. Factoring all that in, and granted, I know he doesn't operate that side of ball, but he's got a bad defense as well, and yet somehow, some way, they're 4-3, and for the most part, due to Stafford's attributing to that, leading these late game drives, being as smart as he can be. He's on 4 picks, and not just being smart with the ball, but being smart on the field, period. If he sees an open lane to run through, he's going to run it 9 times out of 10. He's being a leader on the team, for the team, on the field. He calls out a player when he needs to get called out. I think about what against Indy with the whole, cussing out both Jones and Ebron on that final play because they focused more on getting more yards instead of just getting the fuck out of bounds when they had no timeouts left. I remember him just F-bombing Golden Tate on the sideline against Chicago for running the wrong route. So you need that type of leadership from your quarterback, your starting quarterback, your franchise quarterback who you spent the number 1 draft pick on in 2009. You need that type of fire from him. And he has shown that more on that and then some in this season. And, in terms of quarterback rating or QBR, how the hell you want to rank it, NFL.com has it listed in the top 5. Stafford is ahead of Drew Brees. Stafford is 105.7. Only players that he is behind is number 1 Tom Brady, who's having, I guess, he may not get voted the award because I think some writers will be spiteful to him for how he acted against the league, the whole Deflategate scandal and all that bullshit. So he might not get it. And another guy in Matt Ryan. So between Stafford and Matt Ryan, those are 2 top candidates, I would say. But yes, Matthew Stafford, without question, deserves the attention, whether it be not just what we're hearing locally, because we're seeing lots of national people talking about it now, from ESPN to FS1 to Fox Sports to CBS even. You're constantly hearing Stafford MVP, Stafford MVP. So that word of mouth is getting out there. So you have to think that it makes a good case for Stafford's team, for Stafford's chances, rather. And if this team somehow, as currently constructed as they are, knowing what coach they have, what franchise and organization they have, if this team somehow gets to the playoffs this year, wins 10 games, makes the playoffs, Stafford, he's got to be on that short list. He may not win it, but he's got to be on that short list, in my view, if that happens. So, yes, the MVP talks for Matthew Stafford are without question very warranted and very well deserved.
Here's an extra cherry on top of the sundae, a highlight for you. Stafford was ranked number 1 in the top 5 arms in the NFL, according to NFL.com. Did you see the video?
He's got a cannon. Yeah, he's got a cannon. I mean, we knew all about that coming out of Georgia. All you need to work on is fixing his accuracy. I think it's safe to say he's done a damn good job of it so far throughout his career. He's only 28. He just played in his 100th career NFL game. He has a lot of records for a young quarterback that's played 100 games in his pro football career so far. So the future is very much bright and very well ahead for Stafford. We just got to see how much can he keep this up, and I think he's got a good chance of doing that so far. Like I said, there was a question about his accuracy. He's thrown for 68 so far this year. He's at a 68% completion, 68% rate for his completion percentage. So in terms of, and in fact, it could be higher if it wasn't for all those drops that I mentioned earlier. So take that into consideration. Yeah, I agree with that ranking. We all know he had the ability to throw the deep ball. It was just a matter of showing off, fixing up his accuracy and the pinpoint was certain throws. I think he's more than shown that in the 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I agree. Just very exciting and fun to watch, especially for a team who has won only one playoff game since 1957.
Next question.
Question number 5. Are the NFL playoffs looking like a possibility for the Lions again?
It's weird to say. I can't be definitive and say yes for sure, but it's very possible. I will say that. Because assume they go out on the road and beat Houston, which I think in my view is a winnable game. They're 5-3. Now, when you look, and they'll be 5-3 exactly at the halfway point. So, this will be the remaining games: 2 against Minnesota, 1 against Chicago, 1 against Green Bay. Still got to play the Giants and the Cowboys, and you play the Saints and the Jaguars. Those are your remaining 8 games after Houston. In my view, you have a good chance to win at least 4. At least 4. Jacksonville is Jacksonville. Chicago, you have both Chicago and Green Bay at home. The crowd will be fired up for that. The Giants, they don't look that so hot this year. So, and if you find a way to split one of those games against Minnesota, there's your 5th win right there. So, in my view, it's possible. I mean, they still got to beat Houston first. But if they beat Houston, I would definitely be more affirmative with my choice. But for now, I'm leaning towards a yes.
All right.
Next question.
Question number 6. Are the Red Wings looking like a better team after 7 games?
See, that's the difference between looking better as a team after 7 games in a football year where you got 16 chances to show yourself, whereas this is an 82-game hockey season. It's still very early. We're not even out of the first month yet. I can't really make a definitive statement on that, as compared to the Lions question. So they look good for now. 5-game winning streak is nothing to shit on. They've got much better goaltending play. I still want to see better defensive play, but for now they're playing some of the right guys that they need to play, and as a whole, it's translating to good results. So, yeah, they look better. They do look better from what they started off. 5-game win streak speaks for itself, but I won't be so enthusiastic with that optimism because they still got a whole hell of a lot of season left to play.
Yeah, let's just hope Anthony Mantha just gets called up and replaces Steve Ott in some way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Next question.
Question number 7. Is defense still an issue for the Pistons?
Yes, as evidence what we saw tonight, very much so. It's not just perimeter defense or even, paint presence defense. It's team defense as a whole. They got to find a way to not only find the right scheme, but also when to rotate, when to cover the right zone, when to switch off a guy, and also, more importantly, transition. You got to find a way to not get caught like a deer in the headlights. Can't let them get easy baskets. We're not just talking fast break, off the miss or off a turnover even. Even after you score, you saw, for instance, sometimes we're like they're getting close, and boom, Toronto runs right down the court on them and scores another basket. I mean, for God's sakes, I think DeMar DeRozan just hit another 3 right now. So they still have a lot to work on in that department. It's going to take a whole lot of a multitude of parameters and layers in terms of how they can fix this defense as a whole. It was definitely a big reason why they lost. Why they had the record that they had last year and got swept in the first round. So there's definitely, if they have anything that they need to improve on, it's definitely that.
Next question.
I have to agree. Question number 8: Can Mamdou Ndiaye make an impact in the NBA? I think so.
Like I said, when you're that tall and you have that amount of height on you, I think you have a good enough coach in Stan Van Gundy who knows how to coach big men. Yeah, you got a chance. You see what we have here with Drummond and Boban. You add Ndiaye into the mix, assuming Eric Baines is not brought back next year. Coach up this player. He's very raw. He's still in prospect mode in terms to polished off product mode. So you got to really tune him up. This is definitely a project in process. So he's got the potential. It's always there. So if they play their cards right, show him the right technique and fundamentals that he needs to show up on, he can be a very good contributor.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Next question.
Question number 9. Now that we hear that the Tigers are putting up a total fire sale, do we sense they are starting a tanking process?
Tank? No. I think it's going to be similar to what we saw. We saw how that second half of the season went for them in 2015 when they did the fire sale. Their season was basically over by that point anyway, so they were basically a mediocre team, middle-of-the-road team that could give you, 72 wins or so, 72, 75 wins on average. So in terms of full-blown tank, where they lose 100 games or anything or try to match 119, no, I don't see that happening. They still have way more talent on this team than that 03 team could ever muster. So full-blown tank job, no, I don't see that happening. I do see like I said, short-term a decrease in quality. So, if this team goes from where they were this year to, let's say, barely reaching 80 wins or just getting to 75 wins, that wouldn't shock me.
Is that all it takes to bonus question here? Is that what it takes to get their manager Brad Ausmus fired? Because that's what we're hoping
the playoffs
for.
Again, yes. Yeah, flat out. There's a reason why he was brought back on an option instead of just being outright extended. Because if they miss the playoffs again, they could say, "Hey, we tried. We gave him all the options we can, so we're not bringing him back." So kind of like the Mike Babcock option, you part ways, but you don't say you're fired. So I could see that happening.
Yeah, I guess that's fair enough.
Next question.
Finally, question number 10: Can the returning hitting coach Lloyd McClendon perk up their bats? To say the least, probably not. Personally, I say definitely not.
I wouldn't be too surprised because familiarity always helps. It always seems like whenever fans have best memories of the Tigers' offense in the recent years, they point out to the 2011, 2012, 2013 teams. And guess what? Lloyd McClendon was the hitting coach on that squad. You could say, age has caught up to him, but some fans will hold on to that belief. Listen, we need the right coach in there, and they think I think that they feel that the Tigers have made the right hire by bringing back Lloyd. I personally wouldn't have done that. I would have looked for somebody else that was as equally as qualified, if not so way more than him. But I can get the sense of why they did it.
Yeah, what about their postseason efforts offensively? They didn't perk up much, did they? Especially with Prince Fielder on their team.
No, but Prince Fielder, was showing a little bit of a case of that when he was playing even in Milwaukee, to an extent. It was just really further put under the microscope because he had such a big man of contract with the Tigers.
Yeah. That's got to be on Dave Dombrowski. But I'm glad he made the trade for Ian Kinsler, sending Fielder to the Rangers. But that's going to wrap up our 10-question segment. And for all the listeners and fans out there, if you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. That's going to wrap up episode 235 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, the weekend review. Ed, thanks so much again for your help. I'll talk to you again on episode 236, possibly on Friday morning at 10 a.m. when we preview Michigan at Michigan State, the Lions at Texans, and other football in the Minton.
Yep, looking forward to it, Taylor. Talk to you then.
All right. So before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips, online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at taylorgator14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio DET and like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group. Also find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything else you guys want more of or less of on our podcast, please let us know. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips and at EdSmith313. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our Facebook group. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.